And Xavier taught me the Delphi method. And Xavier, would you explain to Sarah? She's
I
probably
never heard of that.
she's experienced it, but she probably hasn't seen the like formal definitions.
So one way I'd put it into a nutshell is essentially the Delphi method is the pseudoscientific contention that expert opinion distilled through a bunch of think tank processes can form a consensus about any given set of policy decisions.
And they set the parameters.
So it is a
Right.
it is a manufacturing of consensus. You basically Rand Corporation level gamed closed feedback loop.
Interesting.
That proliferates in pretty much every single segment of so-called credentialed authoritarian bureaus, agencies, boards, what have you. They use some variation of this method that
Right.
more or less exempts any sort of public review from their decision-making process. They said, "Oh, well, we've had this meeting and we've put it through these focus groups and these surveys and these polls and these, charts indicate that this is the best decision. And y'all can have you can speak to the contrary all you want and have your, minute or 2 minutes to vent your concern, but we're not really listening to that because y'all are just the plebs. You're not the experts.
It's a dog and pony show. And that's what gets me is I don't mind having a conversation with anyone about politics, as long as we're kind and respectful, I'll have a conversation with anyone. But most individuals who have not been at a hearing do not understand the dog and pony dog and pony show, you know what I'm trying to say. And like you say, this Delphi method where it's this illusion of what, it just, we're, this looks good. And
so,
in a perfect world, it would be nice to just simply trust the government. But once, one thing you said, Dave, when we met last week is once you've seen what we've seen, you can't unsee it.
Right. Yeah. And it's only through that trial by fire that that I'm convicted of it. You can go online and sleuth all you want. Maybe, who am I to say? You can become convicted without directly touching it. But until you go locally, I knew there was corruption, right? I was awake in my mind before I decided to leave my kitchen, to use your words.
Right.
But when I left my kitchen, I was amazed at how close it was. It was not some far distant enemy at the Vatican, although it is that too. But it's actually here. It's much more local than you might imagine. And you said you're in Powhatan. We're over here in Orange County, and it's an unassuming community. You would not appreciate the level of corruption that exists in the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina unless you actually get involved at the local level and realize how far gone we really are. Because
and that's what's really interesting with Powhatan is, so it's my understanding from one of our board members, I never took the time to really research it, but in 2015, Powhatan was one of the most conservative, or he said the most conservative county in the nation. And so here it is, 2021. I'm sure we've changed in some respect, but we're still very conservative, and we're very unique where our board hearings are not like many that I have been to here in Powhatan. There are many awakened parents, and it's interesting how let me go back when I was pregnant with my second child. It was in 2019. I was at a meeting and a school board member told me, and others that were at this meeting that critical race theory was in our schools, but by a different name. And when I got involved, there were several groups already involved and working on this far before I ever came into the picture. And then in May, what really helped kind of push this drive against critical race theory, it took a board member stepping up and basically saying, you all are right, that this critical race theory is in schools under the guise of the name cultural competency.
And so what a euphemism. What a euphemism.
Yes.
Now, were they begrudging? Were they like regretful that they discovered this? Did you get the impression that like it slipped under their radar, or were they just playing dumb?
My goodness. The school board, I definitely believe that it is my personal belief, because I have to be careful because I do speak on behalf of, I want to separate what I speak from and as me as an individual and then as a grassroots lead. Me personally, I feel that the school board was very much aware, especially because in 2019, I had a school board member tell me that it was under a different name. I feel
premeditated,
fairly confident that many in the community would agree. And if it wasn't the school board, we know for certain that administration knew, and administration lied about it. And our superintendent enrolled us in a divisive program without board authority. And we have called for his resignation for, my goodness, like almost 6 months now. And it gets to a point where it's a joke that,
Are you at the point of mocking? Because we got at the with the Orange Water and Sewer Authority, we got to the point of mocking because
vicious.
They were a joke. They made them a joke of themselves.
Right. And that's what it's pretty much become at the last board hearing I was at.
It's like, who are these people? Who are they my neighbors? They like live near me? I just ugh.
Yeah, they put themselves on a pedestal. Right. And what's funny is at the last board hearing, there were several of us who were just over it. And we were reprimanded by the board, who, technically we employ them. And one individual was reading a FOIA document and was reprimanded for it. Well, according to state law, she's permitted to read it, and it's public information.
They don't care. They do not care.
It's just a confidence game for them. If they think they can intimidate you.
And see, that's why power in numbers, right, Sarah? That's why when you go to these meetings and there aren't a lot of people there, it's discouraging. Right. But when there are a lot of people there, it's pretty exhilarating to get up there and say what you want to say, because if you're telling the truth,
you're backed up.
Exactly.
And it resonates with the people.
Truth is easy.
Yes,
you don't really have to fight when you have the truth, because you can stay on offense. And that's where we're really fortunate in Powhatan, because we have so many people involved. And somehow I have taken the honorary seat. I work with other grassroots, and of course we share information with each other. I am somewhat the bad cop. So when there's, dirt or things that need to be brought to light,
that's the fun role.
I'm the one who gets the opportunity to disclose that information.
That's fun. Sarah, we have some questions actually for you from our live chat participants.
Sure.
This is from John Galt.
Nice.
For Sarah.
Hi, John.
Who in the Fed? Do you know the shareholders of the Fed? Did you ever have like visibility into who like you mentioned the bank was separate from the board of governors? That's not a publicly traded company, so I'm imagining that's not recorded at the SEC. Did you have visibility into who the shareholders of the Federal Reserve banks were?
No, so I did not have visibility into the shareholders of who the banks were. Basically, what my main focus area was reviewing finances in many aspects, and where I knew individuals, where every loan that they held, where their investments were. And my primary focus area was making sure that there was not a conflict of interest in respect of having a car loan with, if it was in the 5th district, so Richmond, we oversaw SunTrust, and so you could not have a car loan with SunTrust, and then with financial investments. And I did not see anything with shareholders. I'm sure that that's at a level probably in General Counsel, I would assume. But I did, while I was there, discover a vice president who had a very serious financial conflict of interest, that was subsequently elevated to General Counsel, and the issue had elevated so much that I actually stepped out, and General Counsel fully took over. And it was very awkward because
So he failed upward? Is that what you're telling me? He failed upward?
This vice president was actually a woman. She had financial investments that were not permitted by the Federal Reserve, and but then there's all these if this, then that rules. So if you acquire this investment by these means, then you can have it. And the vice president started changing their story once they started to understand, oh, had I acquired this investment that way, then I can keep it, which is really, that is a conflict of interest in of itself. And I'm trying to think, like it's hard to, there's so many rules, but then there's so many ways to skirt around the rules. If that, does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm sure the General Counsel knows which ones they are.
Mm-hmm.
Right, exactly. And
he probably wrote them.
And it was one of those situations. It was really, really hard because when I discovered this, I can remember sitting at my desk. I can remember losing sleep at night, thinking, because this person was actually my boss, or 2 up from me. And I'm just thinking, like, okay, if I report this, like, I'm done. I'm going to have a target on my back.
Even though
but at the
that's your job.
Right. And then that's what I was taught. I trained under one of a very, very, just an incredible attorney under in General Counsel at the Federal Reserve. And she had always taught me, don't do anything you can't do, that you cannot explain on headline news. And I just felt that.
Wow.
Yeah,
this is what I said to her.
Now that I know,
this is what I said to her. She didn't have to say 1/10 of what she's just said on our show at the gathering where we talked about this. But I said, "Oh, I figured it out immediately. They wanted you to be a Jen Psaki. That's exactly what they wanted you to be from the get-go, because the way she was explaining it to me was, I'm doing my job and I'm being punished for it." And I said, you were doing what you thought the job was for.
Yeah.
Right.
But in fact, the job was spin doctor.
Well, and to actually redact and sort of gatekeep specific sensitive details.
Yes.
Right.
Can you disclose who this where this conflict of interest, because you oversaw examiners of banks? Can you disclose which bank
say that again?
was?
I'm sorry.
You said you were examining examiners of banks.
Yes.
Is this a particular bank who had this conflict of interest? Can you disclose that?
No. So this individual was an executive, and so they were not a bank examiner. So they oversaw, I would say, kind of like the administration side of supervision, regulation, and credit.
Wow.
And but I will say I am aware of, so at the Federal Reserve, they have what's called central point of contacts with various banks. And what they try to do is set limitations on the amount of years that a central point of contact can be the point person with a specific bank. And again, it's this illusion of not having a conflict of interest.
Because they can just keep the revolving door of central point of contacts creates a plausible deniability every time you get a new person, because then they're like, oh, I'm the new person, I have to relearn everything, I'm not aware of what happened previously, so what do you want me to do?
And really, I mean, think about your work experience.
Am I right or wrong? Am I right or wrong?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. But also, even if a new central point of contact comes out, let's just say, and this is hypothetical, if you are an executive at a bank and you're experiencing an issue that, maybe relates to the Federal Reserve, are you going to call the new guy, or are you going to call the guy that you worked with for 5 years?
I know exactly what you're talking about. I mean, if I was brought in, let's say I was one of these naive, unwoke employees of the Federal Reserve, and I was brought in as a central point of contact or at a bank, let's say, and that was like a big move up for me. Okay. It's a promotion from whatever I was doing before. And I am brought in, I'm told what my role is, and that doesn't include taking any responsibility for anything that happened before I was there. I would do the same thing.
Right.
Right.
I would.
And that's part of the compartmentalization.
It is. Right. It's intentional. It's by design, like you've said, Sarah.
Well, and if you are familiar with where the Federal Reserve is located in Charlotte,
yes, I am.
You can literally walk up the street to Bank of America, and the central point of contact for Bank of America is out of the Charlotte branch. And I to this day, I have no idea why this person told me this. I was on my way out of the Richmond Fed, and I was going to be working for the Chicago Fed at this point, and it was one of my last business trips. And they told me that they did not have phone calls with Bank of America, that everything was offline, and they would walk up the street and meet with them. Why if what you're doing, Sarah, is on the up and up? Yeah.
Can you see my screen?
I can.
Okay. I'm showing right now a mural that is painted in the Bank of America. Right, Xavier? It's
Bank
the
of America in
Bank
Charlotte.
of America in Charlotte. This is hanging somewhere in the Bank of America building, right?
I don't know if the exhibit's current, but this was a
It's been
mural.
reported to have been hung and hanged and displayed at the Bank of America, and
that's a really unusual picture.
Okay,
there's more.
To be in a bank.
So Xavier, before we ever connected on this level, Sarah, Xavier has given me many disquisitions about this mural, and I would he's all excited because he knows where I'm going with this. Why would this be hanging in a bank, Sarah?
I honestly have no idea. I don't.
But it's fucking weird, right?
Yeah, it's really bizarre. Like,
the world of banking and finance is very occultic.
When you pulled it up, I'm like, where are you going with this? I would have never guessed in a million years that this was hanging in a bank.
Xavier, what's your thought?
Oh man, where to begin? I mean, this is just rife with occult symbology of the left-hand variety. I mean, you look in the lower left-hand corner, you have the sort of managerial class, hemming and hawing about decisions, but it's compartmentalized and subordinate under the feet of what looks like a young boy being initiated on a white and red checkerboard, not just white and black, but white and red, which signifies blood sacrifice. And then you literally have a pyramid in the background, and a solar eclipse literally suspending and hanging in the balance this human form in a cube, and then you've got all these Masonic stairways leading into the sky. I mean, and then you have the red bar coming down from the right hand side, which could indicate basically the corruption of our better natures through satanic seduction. And ultimately, this was put up there for you even have the burning bush in the background. I mean, for crying out loud.
I think about also the pyramid, right? So Sarah, you talked about your awakening journey, and I've detailed this previously, but a big awakening moment for me was in 2008. Like you said, the market was shit. I had just graduated college, and I was told, you know, I've been through 4 years of university. I can translate this into a profitable career where I will earn these paper notes that have these really weird pyramids on them. Okay, and so
that's when I see the pyramid. That's actually what I thought about was
the dollar,
money,
the dollar, right? And so and who's below the pyramid? Like at the bottom of the pyramid, actually under the pyramid, in the subterranean earth, are the business people. The bankers, ostensibly the managers. So even though we we're earning this money, we are saving this money, we're using this energy, we are, you know, subordinate to it essentially. And that's my take on it. And you know, I don't know how, you know, occultic you look into some of these issues, but like when you look into finance, and that's why it piqued my interest, like my ZNN meter was going like 11 when you were like, I was in ethics and compliance at the Federal Reserve. I'm like, let's have a conversation. This is so, because it's like one of our central interests is the nature of money, what, you know, because one of the big epiphanies for me was every dollar that's issued, it's actually a debt instrument.